Hey there! I'm trying something a little different for this one, so excuse the lack of editing in this quick thoughts video. This is mostly in an effort to reduce the arduous amount of video editing that is required in my more comprehensive dissections. Seriously, after a long editing session, my strong hand feels the way this one looks, and I need to keep my strong hand in good shape for a very important activity. Don't get the wrong idea, obviously, I'm talking about painting models. For some time now, I have felt negatively towards invulnerable saves. And if I recall correctly, in the last few dissections I think I brought up that point without really clarifying it. So that is what I plan to do today. The question is, are invulnerable saves ruining 40k on the tabletop? Well, let's break it down and explore the logic here, and see if we can come to a conclusion. I suppose the best place to start would be, what are invulnerable saves? Invulnerable saves are a type of save you can use to avoid damage, similar to armor saves. When damage is sustained, you roll against the specified value to determine if damage was negated by your armor. But unlike armor saves, invulnerable saves aren't modified by a weapon's armor penetration characteristic. This in effect denies the tactical impact made by the attacking weapon's AP versus that target, and relegating the outcome to the luck of the roll. For example, if someone fires a heavy laser destroyer, a weapon designed to burst through thick tank plating, and so has a profile with a substantial amount of AP, at a target with an invulnerable save, that AP becomes meaningless. With that context, it should be clear that invulnerable saves are an extremely potent defensive ability. But are potent abilities innately problematic? The answer is of course no. In fact, I think most players quite prefer their independent character units having invulnerable saves, myself included. Interestingly, invulnerable saves provide characters that extra layer of protection, acting in a manner to something like plot armor. Now for clarity, I'll specify in the context of storytelling, plot armor is absolutely a negative attribution. But as far as tabletop wargaming goes, it adds that little bit of fickle protection to those individuals of significance within the fighting force. So then, given the mechanical dilution caused by invulnerable saves as it relates to armor penetration, it makes good sense for them to be used rather sparingly. Speaking of which, if memory serves, during 8th edition's launch, Mini Wargaming's Matt shared his feelings on invulnerable saves, proposing they were too common even then. But now we're a far cry away from those times, where it feels as though invulnerable saves are more prevalent than ever. Where now it's not uncommon for multiple units within an army, or even the majority of an army, if not the totality of an army, to have an invulnerable save. The latest iteration of rules provided to the Thousand Sons and Black Templars come to mind. So what does the proliferation of invulnerable saves do to the 40k tabletop experience? For starters, it certainly skews your war gear selection. When the paradigm is one where you will encounter an excess of invulnerable saves on multi-wound units, the single-shot high-impact weapons hold less value, since their one shot can't leverage the potency of its AP to deal damage with certainty, and so it becomes more preferable to take weapons which deal a greater volume of shots even if they have less potency overall, thus creating the scenario where weapons which ought to be less effective against armored units become more preferable and in turn more suitable. The reality of this circumstance was made pretty clear over the course of 8th edition, and still holds true presently. And then we have what the excess of invulnerable saves does to unit selection. When enemy mech and monster units possessing invulnerable saves are a common occurrence, it skews player preferences towards their own mech and monster units. If I am going to face off against Thousand Sons, fielding 3 Hellbrutes leveraging army-wide invulnerable saves, why would I opt to take Dreadnoughts? Units which would ordinarily be their counterparts if not for the Hellbrutes' invulns. The logic here being that since large mech and monster units can threaten each other, why would I choose to put myself into a scenario where my AP is relegated to luck, where my opponent's AP can chew through my armor? I really want to stress the value of this disparity. Think about player choice as it relates to the mechanics of the attack sequence in isolation. The attacking player chooses a unit of theirs to attack an enemy unit with its weapons. Based on the stat line of the attacking unit, the profile of the weapon being used, and the stat line of the defender, we undertake a series of tests. And it's important to acknowledge these are dice-based tests, and so come with the fickleness of dice. First we roll to hit based on the attacker's skill. This test is done versus a single variable. which isn't within your capacity to make easier or harder based on the target's stat profile. Your required dice result is largely based on your faction's common skill level. Then you roll to wound. This test is done by comparing the attack's strength versus the defender's toughness. This test is one that is within the capacity of the player to control. Unlike the hit test, target selection will allow this test to be made easier, since the target toughness is a variable of the equation. Then the enemy rolls to save. This last test is done by comparing the attack's AP versus the defender's save. And this final test of the attack sequence is the one most within the player's capacity to control, as the equation is modifiable to such a degree that you can outright deny the test. In essence, the AP to save test is the only one which you can auto-pass based on applying the right attack into the right target. And in a game of tactical choices, which is largely ruled by the outcome of dice rolls, this is an extremely valuable component to validating players' tactical decisions. This of course goes out the window when the target has an invulnerable save. Looking back to the Thousand Sons Halberd vs Dreadnought example, it makes the prospect to evenly trade these units into each other a far less likely prospect. And so if the paradigm is one where you can encounter enemy forces where the vast majority possess invulnerable saves, my unit selection preference is skewed in kind. And so in such a world, I would rather look to Contemptor Dreadnoughts instead. And with all that laid out, I think yes, the proliferation of invulnerable saves is certainly resulting in a worse experience of 40k on the tabletop. But how do you address such an issue? Now, some may make the argument that you just need to increase the points cost of units with invulnerable saves relative to their invulnerable save lacking counterparts. And speaking honestly, I'm not all that partial to that approach. While it's fairly easy to say an invulnerable save of X is worth Y points, the nature of invulnerable saves as they currently function is quite difficult to quantify, since it all comes down to the roll of a die. You have to rule it based on the supposed probability, and hope the dice fall in that manner. And if you've played 40k even a little bit, you know you can't always count on that. And I certainly don't think the solution is to just further increase access to invulnerable saves to the point where virtually all units have them, since all that does is further devalue the armor penetration of weapons. So where does that leave us? Presently, the only methods that come to mind on how to address such an issue is to either pull back how common invulnerable saves are, or to change the mechanics behind invulnerable saves such that they don't harm AP as severely, or alternatively, so their underlying mechanisms are more quantifiable. Well, that's it for this one. Thanks for dropping by. So what do you feel on this conversation about invulnerable saves? And what are your ideas on how the invulnerable save mechanisms can be improved? Feel free to let me know in the comments. As always, a special thanks to my patrons, Julius Maximus, as well as the others, who help keep the dream alive. So, if you enjoyed this video, there is a like button, and if you want to help my channel grow, there is a subscribe button. There is also a bell button and a share button, so press the buttons you want to press. And with that, I'll hope to see you guys in the next one.